Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well and are having a flare-free day. In today's video, I wanted to talk about endometriosis flare-ups and the things day to day that can actually trigger our endo flares to come forward. We can talk about what a flare-up is more specifically, as well as some ways to help manage those flares if they come forward. Now, I do want to be clear that this video is not a conclusive list of things that can trigger an endo flare to come forward. What may trigger my endo symptoms may not trigger your flares to come forward. And if you have something different in your day-to-day that triggers a flare for you, feel free to comment it down below, as I'm sure it will help somebody else in their journey kind of recognize the signs and symptoms of why a flare-up may come forward. So first and foremost, what is a flare-up? A flare-up is when you have more intensified pain than the regular amount of pain you feel on a day-to-day basis with your chronic illness. Flare-ups can last hours, days, weeks, and they can be really hard to track when they come forward. Flare-ups are different depending on the body. So your flare-ups might be different than my flare-ups. The amount of pain, the intensity of it, and the threshold of those symptoms are gonna look different. So again, this video is just an overarching view of certain triggers, but your body may experience different triggers for your endo flares. So I don't know about you, but the first thing that I noticed that triggered my endo flares to come forward more intensely was specific exercises. I used to do intense running, so running long distances for a long period of time. But I noticed if I was running past a certain kilometer or mile mark, that my flares would start to kick in, and I could feel like inching forward endo symptoms like abdominal cramping, and especially upper thigh leg pain was like my number one symptom with intense exercises. I found that if I pushed past my limits of running, if I was like, okay, I feel these pains coming forward, but I'm just gonna like push past it because it's a beautiful day and I'm loving this tune or whatever it is, I would have a full-on flare episode of endometriosis wherever I was running. So I would either have to find a bench or lie down in the grass or just ride it out. I just found that specific exercises, specifically running, was something that triggered my endo flares to come forward. The same was like intense spin classes. So again, exuding so much energy and like movements and just 45 minutes of nonstop moving. I would have to leave classes. I felt a little bit embarrassed in those moments because it was typically a dark room where everyone was like biking and the music was bumping. And I was like, I feel like I'm ruining the atmosphere by opening the door to the bright lobby, or, you know, they can see me leave, but I just couldn't take on the class because I could tell an endo flare was coming. Recognizing the signs of certain exercises that you do and how the intensity is may help you realize that it could trigger an endo flare for you. I'd be curious to hear down below if you experience, you know, flares that are triggered based on certain exercises that you do. Stress. Stress is a big one when it comes to a trigger for an endo flare. I found that when I was holding on to so much stuff in the day of, okay, my brain is going in certain directions and I have so much on my plate and I'm just wearing down my mental and physical body by running all over the place or doing things all the time. It just built up to a point where my body was recognizing that, whoa, this girl is stressed right now, and like I'm feeling very like amped up, and a flare would often happen. So I don't know about you if flares come forward when you're stressed, and I'd be curious to know how you manage that stress. For me, it's really hard to manage stress sometimes, especially when it's in the workplace, but talking to your human resources team to say like you deal with endo can help reduce the amount of work on your plate, or even just being open with your manager or someone that you report to saying, hey, I deal with this and these are some of the symptoms that come forward when I'm like extremely stressed. So that's something that you can do workplace wise or school wise. For myself, I like to take long baths or read or walk. Again, something that gets me totally out of the stressful zone that I'm in, and changing my environment by walking outside has really helped reduce my stress. Journaling, again, I'm always an advocate for journaling to help reduce stress and just get all your thoughts onto paper and just tuck the book away. The body is so in tune with things that are going on in the brain and in the heart and like the way you move your body. So if you're super stressed about things, I find that that's when my flares come forward. And so be mindful, and I'd be curious to know if you notice stress being a trigger for your flares. Certain foods and beverages can trigger an endo flare. I'm talking to individuals in the community with endo. A lot have endo flares when they eat highly inflammatory foods. So that being like really fast food, deep greasy type of food, alcohol or coffee even. I'm gonna be really transparent with this. I love coffee so much. It's like something that was so hard to give up during pregnancy. But decaf, surprise, surprise, we've come a long way with coffees. Taste, in my opinion, very similar to the coffee vibe that I'm searching for flavor-wise. So decaf is something that I turn to a lot, especially when I'm getting close to my period. Inflammatory foods are something that can cause an endo flare to be triggered. I don't know if you're similar with your body and foods and beverages that like trigger it, and I'd be curious to know what those are in the comments. But things that I've been focusing on to help reduce the amount of inflammation in my diet is, a lot of fish and chicken and hearty vegetables. I'm thinking whole foods. I know that there's a certain, nutritional plan that people turn to based on their own body and their nutritional needs. So again, like don't change your nutrition unless talking to a doctor or a professional, especially if you're on medication and things. But your nutrition may be something that you want to look into on tweaking to really help manage your flares if you notice that you're eating or drinking certain foods and you're having a flare up, a couple of hours or a day or two after. My period was a main cause of an endo flare to come forward. The first 48 hours of my period in the menstrual cycle was excruciating. I felt the pains come forward, which again were that like tight abdominal, sharp, barbed wire sensation around my abdomen, brain fog, sweating, and that leg pain. I would always have that leg pain in my upper thigh, and I just knew that that was the start of my period. So I know a lot of individuals, when it comes to endo flares, experience them around the time of menstruation, and that is why we also have a societal taboo when it comes to endo, that it's a period disease or a reproductive disease because it has painful periods as a symptom. But again, endo is a full body disease. It just happens to have painful periods as a symptom of the disease. So that was something that was super frustrating to me and I don't know how you felt about it, but I was just like, okay, like a period every month is going to cause this flare up to happen. I feel a lot better in a way that like I'm not the only one that deals with flares around the time of my period. Again, I felt like my body was working against me. I felt my body was strange growing up because no one else had like excruciating pain during the time of their period. And so know that you're not alone and that flare-ups are shitty. They're like not a fun thing to go through and they're excruciatingly painful. And if only we could let somebody know the pain, not in a malicious way of just like, this is what I deal with on a monthly or weekly, whatever it is basis. I think, it would get a lot of more traction and support for endo and those that deal with it. But I don't know about you, but menstruation and periods are definitely a telltale sign of an endo flare to be triggered. But again, endo is unique in itself, and that some individuals don't have period pain when it comes to their endo. They have other symptoms that are related to endo, such as brain fog or fatigue or infertility, but they may not suffer from painful periods. So just keep that in mind, that everyone's symptoms and the expression of those symptoms are different based on our bodies. Surgery for endometriosis, so laparoscopic excision surgery or ablation surgery, whatever you opt to do. Again, excision is the gold standard of treatment for endometriosis. You may have intense flare-ups or a triggered flare following a surgical procedure that can sometimes be temporary during the recovery period. Sexual intercourse or painful sex can be a sign of endometriosis in itself. If this is a new symptom for you, it's really good to talk to your doctor about it, as well as your partner of like, this is how you're feeling during that intimate moment. It can actually lead during and after the intercourse or that time of intimacy can lead to a triggered flare-up. Again, talking to your partner about endometriosis can be really helpful and reduce that stress. Again, another level that can cause an endo flare to trigger can be really helpful in keeping that open line of communication with them and just say you deal with this. And if there are other ways to be intimate that would make you feel supported and them supported while you kind of work to figure out how you can manage that intercourse piece. Wearing tight clothing, this is a big one, because when I wore tight jeans or tight leggings, especially around my abdominal area, it would just cause me so much pain. And I think a lot of us, or for myself, it's always like, high-waisted jeans or high-waisted leggings. And I just came to the conclusion that that was not an option fashion-wise for me, because it would just cause an endo flare to happen out of the blue. So that's the frustrating thing about endometriosis, is that flare-ups can happen anytime, anywhere, and it can happen outside of your period. So I would just be sitting at work and I would have tight clothing on, especially around my abdominal area, and I would start to feel cramping. And I'm like, I just had my period like a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm not anywhere near having my period, and I'm just feeling the same sensation of an endo symptom come forward, but I'm not anywhere close to my periods. I started avoiding tight clothing. Leggings, I like to go up a size. Jeans, I kind of avoid, to be honest, but if I do have jeans, they are a looser fit, and it's easier for me to feel more comfortable that way. So I'd be curious to know what fashion choices you make to help your endo feel a little bit better. Especially at night times, I like to opt for softer pajama material or like a nightgown, so that there's nothing around my abdominal area. That's something that I opt for and just changed a little bit to help manage my triggered flare-ups. But I'd be curious to know if fashion choices, especially around the abdominal area, have triggered your endo flares to come forward. Some ways that I help manage my endometriosis flare-ups while I'm at home and in a safe environment are hot, warm baths, heating pads that I go across my abdomen and my lower back. Going for walks is something that I really have seen a huge improvement with my endo flare intensity. Certain teas at night help warm me from the inside out, so I go for herbal teas. I'd be curious to know what you go for, if there's a certain beverage of choice or food that helps you with your endo flares. Curling up in bed and having comfortable pajamas on gets me ready for an endo flare. So again, if I notice I started my period, I can recognize that a flare is probably around the corner, and getting into a position where I can safely be during that flare up without any other distractions can be really helpful to just be in my bed in the fetal position and just ride out the flare-up itself. Now, if I was outside of my home and on a run or at a studio for an exercise class or at school, work, whatever it was, I would always carry with me what I call an endometriosis toolkit. Again, it has little things in it that can help me manage my endo flares away from home. The first thing I had in there was a heating pad. So one of those like magic bean bags that you can heat in a microwave was really helpful at school or work, because I knew that there would be a microwave on site. I would always have hair bands with me to put my hair up. I get really sweaty during an endo flare, and I just find having my face like clear and nothing in my face during that endo flare is helpful, because I'm like not brushing stuff in my face and I just want things away from me in that moment. I just am like, okay, my hair can be up. So a hair tie or a scrunchie is something that I would have on hand with me outside of the home. On a run, I would like to have a charged phone. This can help me call somebody close to me to come pick me up if I'm really not able to move my body. Having a water bottle and being hydrated is really important when it comes to endo flares and managing them. Having a water bottle while you're running or at an exercise class is definitely helpful in general while you're working out. Having that hydration during the flare can be really beneficial. I'd love to hear the tips and tricks that you use to help manage an endometriosis flare-up if it comes forward in your day. Again, you are not alone when it comes to endo flares, and everybody's intensity of it, pain threshold, symptoms are all different and unique. So what may be discussed in this video today and the tips and tricks to help may be different for you or may look different. And again, I'd love to hear your experience about it. But just know that you're not alone. I found that I felt so alone and so isolated those first couple of flare-ups. Again, I didn't know what was happening to my body. I felt like my body was weird or just wrong, and it's not. I'm here to remind you, your body is beautiful and unique and diverse, and that makes you uniquely, beautifully you. And I'm on your side 100%. You're not alone during that flare. I'm cheering you on, and just know that it will end. There will come a point in the day or the week that that flare-up will go away, and that you can return to the things that you love to do and want to do. So with that, I hope this video has been helpful, and I cannot wait to talk to you on the next one.